Most people didn't notice the cleaning crew at Hallberg International. Not out of cruelty, just habit. They came in after hours, wheeling carts, changing trash bags, wiping down conference tables. They moved through the building like background noise, like elevator music. But that Monday morning in Fort Worth, Texas, something shattered the rhythm. Jonathan Kellerman, CEO of Hallberg, was halfway through the marble lobby, coffee in one hand, phone in the other, when he heard it, a voice, sharp, confident, and in Mandarin. He paused, mid-step. It wasn't just the language. It was who was speaking it. He looked up. Near the touchscreen directory stood a woman in a burgundy janitor's uniform. Her short twists were tied back into a neat ponytail. She was speaking fluid Mandarin to an elderly man in a navy jacket who looked both confused and relieved. Her tone was calm, her gestures precise, directing him gently toward the elevators. Kellerman squinted. He recognized her. She was always around late at night, quiet, polite, invisible, unless spoken to. But now, she wasn't invisible at all. She was handling this situation better than most of his international reps. As he moved closer, the conversation ended. The man nodded in thanks and stepped away. Then she turned to a delivery driver holding a clipboard. Sí, el ascensor está justo por allá, she said, effortlessly switching to Spanish. The driver blinked, then smiled. Gracias. Not a second later, she turned to a vendor struggling with a cart of mislabeled boxes. O bloco de conferências B é logo depois da lixeira, she told him in Portuguese. Pointing down the hallway, Kellerman stood frozen. This janitor, this woman just spoke 3 languages in under a minute. Fluently, like breathing. And yet, just yesterday, she'd been cleaning windows outside the executive floor. He stepped forward. Excuse me. She turned, slightly startled. Yes? Sir. He smiled faintly. That was Mandarin. Right. Yes. Sí. And Spanish Portuguese, she nodded. Also German. Arabic. Italian. Swahili. And I read Latin, though I don't really count that. He blinked. You're telling me you speak 9 languages? Yes. Sí. There was no pride in her tone. No bragging. Just fact. Spoken clean as glass. What's your name? He asked. Denise Atwater. He glanced toward the elevator. Miss Atwater, are you free for a few minutes? A flicker of hesitation crossed her face. Not fear. Just that look people have when they're used to being overlooked. She nodded. Yes. All right. They stepped into the elevator. She stood beside him silently, her shoes squeaking gently against the polished tile. Then, just as the doors closed, I've worked here for 13 years, she said quietly. Never thought I'd be invited up. The elevator hummed softly as it rose. Denise stood still beside the CEO, shoulders straight. Expression calm, but her eyes flicked to the glowing floor numbers. He glanced at her again, trying to piece together everything he had just witnessed in the lobby. 9 languages. No hesitation. No ego. Just fluency. And somehow, she'd spent the last decade cleaning up after people who couldn't say hello in a second tongue. When the doors opened on the executive floor, she paused. The air felt different, cooler. It smelled like citrus and polished leather. Money. If you had to give it a cent. Kellerman's assistant looked up, eyes wide at the sight of Denise. He said nothing, just gestured her inside the glass-walled office. Kellerman pointed to a seat. "Please, have a seat." She sat gently, folding her hands in her lap. She didn't look nervous. She looked measured. He leaned forward slightly. "I didn't expect to be having this conversation today." She gave a polite nod. "I didn't expect to be invited upstairs. But I just saw you speak 3 languages in less than a minute, and flawlessly. I need to ask, how does someone with your ability end up cleaning floors?" Denise's eyes shifted toward the window. She was quiet for a beat, then turned back to him. "You got time for the truth?" He met her gaze. "I wouldn't have asked otherwise." She rubbed her palms together, like warming up the words. "All right then. I was born in Toledo, Ohio. Only child. My dad was a pipe fitter. Mom was a nurse's aide. They didn't have much, but they worked hard. Pushed education like it was a religion. I got a full ride to Kent State. Majored in linguistics." She paused. "I loved it. Words. Structure. The way language opens doors. I was halfway through my master's when my mom got sick, stage 4 breast cancer." Kellerman sat silently, listening. "My dad couldn't do it alone. I came home to take care of her. She passed 8 months later. My dad died from a stroke 6 months after that." A shadow passed through her voice. "But it didn't crack. I had a baby not long after. The father disappeared before I could even finish the sentence. And just like that, I was a single mom with no money, no degree, and no backup plan." She glanced up, her voice steady. "So I worked grocery stores, temp offices, nursing homes. One day, a custodial supervisor here offered me night hours. I took it." She shrugged. "It paid the rent. Let me pick my daughter up from school. That was enough." Kellerman didn't interrupt, but his hands had stopped moving. "The thing is," she continued, "I never stopped learning. I borrowed textbooks, read newspapers in 5 different languages, watched international news channels, practiced in my head while I cleaned bathrooms. That part of me never shut off. It's the only thing that still makes me feel like I matter." Her tone never asked for pity. She wasn't fishing for a job. She was giving facts. "Most people never ask," she added softly. "They see the uniform, and they assume." That word lingered like smoke in the air. Kellerman didn't say anything for a long time. He just sat back in his chair, eyes fixed on the woman in front of him. Denise Atwater wasn't just intelligent, she was resilient. She hadn't come to beg. She came with truth. And that truth hit him harder than most boardroom arguments ever did. "I appreciate your honesty," he said at last. She gave a small nod, as if she didn't expect anything more than that. He opened his notebook, made a few quick notes. She raised an eyebrow slightly. "What are you writing?" He glanced up. "Ideas. But also, a favor." Denise tilted her head. "A favor. There's a meeting upstairs in about 30 minutes. A team flew in from São Paulo last night. Our translator canceled last minute. Everyone's scrambling." She blinked, caught off guard. "Portuguese," he nodded. "I heard you speak it earlier. Could you help, just for this one meeting?" She paused, then gave a quiet, "Yes, I can." 20 minutes later, they were walking into conference room 4C. 4 Brazilian executives sat inside, looking tense, scrolling through their phones. A few glanced up when they saw her enter but didn't react. Denise didn't flinch. She stepped forward with calm assurance. nodded to each of them politely, and introduced herself in Portuguese. Smooth, clear, native level. Something shifted immediately. Shoulders relaxed. Eye contact returned. One of the Brazilians made a joke, and Denise chuckled, tossing back a clever reply. They laughed. Loudly. Genuinely. Kellerman didn't speak the language, but he understood everything that mattered. Connection. Confidence. Trust. Denise wasn't just translating. She was bridging people. The meeting ran for 35 minutes. By the end, one of the visitors turned to Kellerman and said, in perfect English, "She's better than any translator we've worked with this year." "Where did you find her?" He glanced at Denise. She was quietly stacking used coffee cups onto a tray. He smiled. "Right here. In the building. Back in the hallway." He caught up with her. "You ever done professional translation before?" She shook her head. "Not officially. I've helped people in hospitals, DMV offices, that sort of thing. But no certificate, no time for school. My daughter needed me more." He slowed his pace. "And where is she now?" "She's 26. Anurse. In Tempe." Denise smiled. Proud, but soft. She paid her own way. Stubborn like her mama. They both chuckled. And for a second, it wasn't CEO and janitor. It was just two people talking about life. The next morning, Denise's badge beeped at the wrong time. She had just finished wiping down the east lobby when her supervisor, Ron, tapped her on the shoulder. He wasn't frowning, but he wasn't smiling either. "Hey." "Whoa, Denise missed her. Kellerman asked to see you again." She blinked. "Did I do something wrong?" Ron shook his head. "He didn't say. Just told me to send you up." She washed her hands, smoothed out her uniform, and made her way back to the same elevator from yesterday. But this time, something was different. People looked up when she passed. Whispers floated through the air. Even the receptionist gave her a polite, knowing smile. By the time she stepped into the executive suite, Kellerman was already waiting by the window, coffee in hand. "Come in," he said. Without turning around, she stood still by the door until he finally faced her. "I've been thinking," he began, "about talent waste. About how many people never get a shot not because they aren't qualified, but because nobody ever stops to look." Denise stayed quiet. "I want to create a new position," he continued. "One that didn't exist before. Something this company badly needs, even if we didn't realize it." She raised an eyebrow. "For what? Cultural liaison for international affairs. Someone who understands languages, cultures, nuance. Someone who can bridge all the gaps we keep stumbling over." Her mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. "You're qualified," he said. "More than most of our leadership team. You've already proven that gracefully, quietly, without ever asking for credit." She stared at him, eyes narrowing slightly. "This real, as real as anything I've ever done." He said, "I don't care about degrees, sub. I care about impact." She shifted on her feet. "Why me?" "Because I watched you solve 3 problems in 3 languages before 9A. Because I've been walking past people like you for too long. And I'm done doing that." Denise crossed her arms. "You know what people are going to say." He nodded. "I don't care." A long silence passed between them. She looked down at her hands, then back up at him. "I've never had an office job before." "You'll learn fast." "I don't have the wardrobe for it." I'll have HR send a clothing stipend. She let out a dry chuckle. You thought of everything. Huh, I'm trying. She took a breath. What about my shift downstairs? We'll find someone, he said. But no one can replace you. She blinked quickly. Once, then stood a little straighter. All right. Then, she said, let's see what I can do. They shook hands. And just like that, everything changed. By Wednesday morning, the news had traveled faster than the elevators. Denise Atwater, night janitor, was now an executive. Nobody knew the full story. Just bits. That she spoke a bunch of languages. That the CEO had handpicked her. That she must have been some kind of undercover consultant. Or spy. The whispers flowed from cubicles to Slack channels. She was just cleaning toilets last week. Someone said. A marketing intern responded. Maybe it's a PR stunt. But some people weren't whispering. Some smiled when they heard, good for her. They said, she earned that. In the staff lounge, 2 junior associates sat with salads and side eyes. I've been waiting 2 years for a promotion. One of them muttered, and she just skips the line. The other shrugged. Maybe she's smarter than all of us. Oh, come on. The first replied, it's Kellerman trying to look progressive. Denise felt it the second she walked into her new office on the 12th floor. It was quiet. Too quiet. A small desk. A plant. A new nameplate on the door. Denise Atwater, Cultural Liaison. International Affairs. It looked official. Permanent. And to some provocative. HR walked her through orientation. Set up her computer. Gave her access badges. Onboarding packets. And a long list of people to meet. But the real adjustment wasn't the systems or the emails. It was the silence. The stares. The gap. Some greeted her politely. Others looked past her like nothing had changed. And a few just looked confused. Later that afternoon, Denise met with Victor, head of international operations. He didn't smile, didn't shake her hand. So, you're the new liaison, he said, like it was a joke wrapped in formality. Denise looked up. That's what I'm told. You got any corporate experience? Only from the outside looking in. She replied calmly. He didn't laugh. I've got contracts from Dubai, issues in Italy, and a vendor mess in São Paulo. Think you can manage that? She stood up slowly. I'll need a few hours to review. But yes, I can. Victor stared for a beat, then dropped a thick folder on her desk and walked out without another word. That night, Kellerman stopped by. How's day one? Denise leaned back in her chair. I've had worse. He smirked. Victor give you trouble? He doesn't scare me. A pause. But can I ask you something? Of course. Why me? You could have just given me a bonus and walked away. Kellerman leaned against the doorway. Because I saw myself in you? She raised an eyebrow. You were a janitor, he laughed once. No, but I was overlooked a lot. Came from a town no one visits. Worked 3 jobs through college. People told me I didn't belong in rooms like this. Denise nodded slowly. Now you decide who gets in. He nodded back. Exactly. There was silence. But not the awkward kind. The heavy kind. The meaningful kind. The email came late Thursday afternoon. No subject line. Just a calendar invite. Meeting Eleanor Craig. 17th floor conference room C. Time 4:00 p.m. Required Denise Atwater, She Street. stared at it for a moment. Eleanor Craig, senior board member. Old school. Old money. Old rules. Denise smoothed her blouse and walked the long corridor to 17C. Inside, the air was cold. The blinds were half drawn. A woman with silver hair and sharp eyes sat at the head of the table. Papers stacked neatly in front of her. She didn't look up. "Have a seat." Denise sat, back straight, hands folded. Eleanor finally raised her gaze. "I've reviewed your file." A pause. "You have no college degree, no corporate certifications, no management history." "That's correct," Denise replied. Eleanor set her pen down slowly. "You were mopping floors 3 weeks ago." "I was." "Help me understand how someone with your background is now handling international contracts." Denise didn't blink. "Because I speak the languages. I understand the cultural nuances. I've already cleared a 3-month delay in our Morocco deal and helped finalize 2 vendor agreements in Brazil." Eleanor's lips tightened. "You think this company should be run on instinct and charm?" Denise's voice didn't waver. "No, ma'am. I think it should be run on results." For the first time, Eleanor blinked. Once. Slowly. "You're a gamble." "I'm used to that," Denise said quietly. "My whole life has been one." Silence. Eleanor tapped her pen twice against the table, then closed the folder. "You may go." Denise stood, walked to the door. Her hand hovered at the handle for a second longer than necessary. Then she left. She didn't cry, didn't curse, didn't crumble. But she did walk out of the building, crossed the street, and sat on a cold bench in the fading light, looking up at the glass tower she now worked in. So many nights she had walked past this place, invisible. Now everyone saw her, and not everyone liked it. She pulled out her phone, called the one voice that always steadied her. "Hey, Ma." It was her daughter. "You okay?" Denise closed her eyes, took a breath. "I just needed to hear you. That's all." They talked for 5 minutes. About groceries, her daughter's dog, a new show she wanted to watch. By the end, Denise was smiling. Espina felt straight again. Her hands didn't shake. When she hung up, she didn't go home. She walked back into that building, back up the elevator, and sat in her office. She didn't say a word to anyone, but the message was clear. She was still here, and she wasn't going anywhere. By Friday morning, word had spread. Not just about the meeting with Eleanor Craig, but about the fact that Denise didn't quit. She showed up early. Again, pressed and polished. Wearing a soft beige blazer someone from HR had rushed to overnight, she walked into her first team meeting with calm shoulders and steady breath. Victor didn't say much, but this time, he listened. Later that day, she took a call with the German office, handled the conversation solo. No translator, no panet, just poise. Around noon, someone passed her office and noticed a note on the whiteboard outside. Handwritten. No name. 3 words, "We see you." Denise paused when she saw it. Read it twice, then smiled just a little, because that was the moment she knew someone was paying attention. Not just Kellerman, not just HR, but others. People who had felt unseen for too long. Over the next 2 weeks, something began to shift. People started dropping by her office, not with questions about policy, but with ideas. Could I run something by you? Do you think this would work in the Dubai account? Would you look over this pitch deck for Tokyo? She said yes. Every time. She never made anyone feel small. Never acted like she had arrived. She just listened and gave answers that made people better. Interns started coming too. Young voices who didn't yet know how to ask the right questions. And Denise met them with patience. One day, a shy intern named Bao lingered near her door. His badge still hung crooked on his shirt. Miss Atwater, yes. He stepped closer. Can I ask you something? Of course. How did you learn all those languages? Denise leaned back in her chair. One word at a time. Same way you will. That afternoon, she walked past the executive lounge and saw 3 junior employees huddled at a table, whispering. They glanced up, and this time, they smiled. The silence was changing. The energy was changing. She wasn't just tolerated anymore. She was becoming trusted. One afternoon, Kellerman met Denise in the break room. He was holding a cup of coffee. Half full. The kind you carry around, but forget to drink. I've been hearing good things, he said. She smiled faintly. I've been trying to ignore the bad ones. He chuckled. You're making waves. She tilted her head. That a good thing? He looked her in the eye. Here it means you're doing something right. They stood in a pause, one of those quiet moments that held more meaning than words. Then Kellerman said, I've been thinking, maybe we've been looking too far outside for talent. All these hiring drives, consultant firms, when maybe what we need is right under our noses? Denise raised an eyebrow. You mean the people we don't see? He nodded slowly. There might be more Denises in this building. We just haven't noticed yet. She looked down for a moment, then back at him. Want help finding them? He smiled. Thought you'd never ask. That same week, they began sketching the outlines of a new internal program. Voicenside a development initiative for hidden talent. Nærsuits. Nordisch. Just people with heart, skill, and untapped potential. Language training, mentorship, cross-department visibility, support for overlooked employees, cafeteria workers, security staff, mailroom assistants, temp contractors. It wasn't about charity. It was about equity. It was about never walking past brilliance again. Word spread. And to Denise's surprise, people signed up. A woman from the copy center who knew 6 dialects of Tagalog. A cafeteria cook who could build code in Python. A part-time security guard working on a patent in his off hours. They weren't potential. They were already powerful. They just hadn't been seen. Denise led the sessions herself, at first, small groups in quiet corners. Whiteboards. Handwritten notes. Shared stories. She didn't preach. She listened. She taught like someone who remembered what it felt like to be ignored. And one by one, something began to happen. People started standing taller, speaking louder, believing more. Denise didn't just build a program, she built a mirror. And finally, people saw themselves in it. The invitation came from the National Logistics Leadership Summit in Cincinnati. At first, Denise thought it was a mistake. She'd never spoken at a conference, never stood behind a podium. But the email was real. They wanted her to deliver the closing keynote, not as a symbol, but as a reality check. Kellerman encouraged her to say yes. You don't need to sound like anyone else. Just say what's true. So she went, wore a navy pantsuit loaned from HR, her mother's gold earrings, and nerves that curled in her stomach like steam. The room was packed: executives, consultants, hiring managers, recruiters, people who had never known her name 3 months ago. She stepped up to the mic, took a breath, and began. 3 months ago, I was cleaning floors outside conference rooms like this one. I wasn't invited to meetings. I wasn't asked what I thought. I knew 9 languages, and no one knew my name. Not because I wasn't smart, but because no one ever looked long enough to find out. A ripple moved through the audience. Some leaned forward. Others stopped scrolling their phones. I was never just a janitor. I was fluent. I was capable. I was ready. But the world doesn't always wait for people like me. So I kept going, quietly, until the right person stopped, looked, and asked. Her voice didn't shake. It didn't need to. The strength was in the simplicity. And now I have a seat at the table. But here's the thing. The table's too small. So I'm bringing extra chairs. The room fell silent. Then stood applause like thunder. On her way out, a young man with tears in his eyes stopped her. My mom's a housekeeper, he said. She speaks 5 languages too. I used to feel ashamed of that. But today, I stood a little taller. Denise touched his arm gently. Don't ever be ashamed of where you come from, she said. The only thing to be ashamed of is staying blind to brilliance. She left the building that day walking taller than she ever had in her life. Not because of the applause, not because of the recognition, but because she hadn't changed herself to fit the role. She brought her whole story with her, and that made all the difference. Success never sits quietly for long, and not everyone in the company clapped when Denise came back from Cincinnati. Whispers returned. Emails were forwarded. Old hierarchies stirred from their slumber. This wasn't just about one woman with language skills anymore. It was about what her rise meant. To the system, to the rules, to those who had grown comfortable staying on top. So the pushback came quietly. At first, a performance review, suddenly scheduled. A department head asking questions. A vague email from a board liaison we should reassess internal promotion protocol. Denise saw it. Felt it. But this time, she didn't flinch. She showed up early. Ran her team meetings. Handled 2 more international accounts. Silently fixed a budgeting error in a French contract that had cost the company thousands. She didn't complain. She didn't confront. She just delivered. Again, and again, and again. But people noticed. Not just the ones who feared her. The ones who believed in her. It started small. An anonymous sticky note on her keyboard. Keep going. We're watching. A cafeteria worker who stopped her in the hallway just to say, I told my daughter about you. A mailroom assistant who left her a folded origami crane with a note inside. Thank you for reminding me. I can still dream. By the following week, even Kellerman could sense the tension. So he stopped by her office. How bad is it? He asked. Denise looked up from her screen. Enough to notice. Not enough to stop me. He nodded. You want me to say something? She leaned back. No. I want to see who says something for me. Kellerman smiled, tired but proud. You've come a long way. She didn't smile back right away. She was thinking. Then she said, they think I don't belong here. He folded his arms. What do you think I belong? More than some of the people trying to push me out. He nodded. They'll get over it. She raised an eyebrow. Or they won't. Kellerman chuckled. And you'll keep showing up anyway. Denise looked him straight in the eye. Every single day. That night, when she left the office, the janitor on the first floor smiled at her. He handed her a sealed envelope. No return address. He said, "Just had your name on it." She opened it in the elevator. Inside, a single note. "I used to walk with my head down. Now I walk taller. Because of you." No name. Just ink. Just truth. By the end of the quarter, Denise's nameplate wasn't just outside her office. It was on a room. The training room where new hires gathered, where mid-level managers ran workshops, where internal promotions were announced. The old plaque came down quietly, and a new one was mounted. The Atwater Room. No announcement. No email blast. Just a sign. Simple. Solid. Permanent. People noticed. They whispered. Some rolled their eyes. Others smiled. And a few stood straighter when they walked past it. Because that room meant something now. It meant you could come from the basement and rise to the 12th floor. You could be seen. You could be heard. You could matter. One afternoon, Denise sat by the window in her office, sipping tea. Bow. The shy intern knocked on her door. He was dressed sharper now, more confident, but still humble. "Miss Atwater," he said, holding a folder. "I have something I want to try presenting next week. Would you give me feedback?" Denise smiled. "Of course." Hay hesitated, then added, "My mom said to tell you thank you." Denise blinked. "Oh, she's a night cleaner at a hotel. She watches all your videos now." Said, "She never thought someone like her could, sit where you sit." Denise put her tea down. She didn't cry, but her throat tightened. "She can," she said. "And so can you." Later that day, she opened her desk drawer. Inside, still resting where she left it, was her old janitor's badge. She held it in her hand. Worn plastic, faded ink, a name, a number, no title, just Denise. She placed it back, gently, not to forget, but to always remember what it took to get here. And when she looked in the mirror that evening before heading home, she didn't see a promotion, or a title, or a story gone viral. She saw a door that had stayed closed for too many years, but now it was open. And she wasn't just walking through it. She was holding it open for the next person. Because in the end, she wasn't trying to prove she was special. She was trying to prove that special was everywhere, if you just looked long enough. Talent has no dress code. Intelligence doesn't need permission. And brilliance doesn't always carry a briefcase. Sometimes, brilliance pushes a mop